I got my bachelor's degree in September of 2008. Do you remember that date? The stock market had just crashed, marking the beginning of a global financial crisis. Imagine how hard it was for a new architect like me, one who lacked confidence and experience, to work at that time. In 2009, I was running an unprofitable business and my parents were paying the bills. And today, 13 years later, I have an award-winning company with 20 employees and a clientele that includes a royal family, Hollywood celebrities, and some of the biggest hotel brands. It took me approximately 8 or 9 years of wondering whether I should quit before I could call my business successful. So today, I'm going to share with you my story and some of the lessons I've learned along the way, hoping that you will find them useful, especially if you're new in your profession or if you're at this point in your career where you feel like quitting. My company works on some of the most beautiful homes in Miami and New York, and I'm also in the process of designing a really beautiful home for my family. But not too long ago, I was renting an apartment / office that was in a building hundreds of years old and in a really bad condition. I had just graduated, so I couldn't afford anything better. I still remember it was summer of 2009 and I had a client meeting there to discuss on a coffee shop. While I was presenting my ideas, my client started screaming. Okay, maybe she didn't like my design, but start screaming? Who does that? It took me a few minutes to realize that she had spotted a cockroach on the wall behind me and she ran out of the office. Don't get me wrong, but appearances do matter, especially if you are in the creative field. I still remember how embarrassed I felt that day. We all have bruises, and to some extent, those shape who we become and what we do in life. For me, that day was a waking moment. Why was I trying to do architecture in an economy that was collapsing? I needed to find an alternative. While I was studying architecture, I was doing some research on YouTube and I bumped into a video of ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD is a 3D modeling software. I got fascinated by how fast and easily a 2D drawing can take shape. I started searching for books that I could buy in order to learn the software, but there was none in the market. After watching many tutorials online, I finally managed to learn it. And then it hit me, since I found it so hard to learn the software due to lack of means, why don't I create those means? And I started writing a book. Before finishing my bachelor, I submitted my first book proposal to all publishing houses in my country, Greece. And they all rejected me. I was so young, as I said, I hadn't even graduated, so it was difficult for someone to trust me, especially in writing a book, since this is something that requires experience and expertise. One publisher replied to me that I was unfortunate because they had just published a book on that same topic. I ran to the bookstore and read it cover to cover. I got so mad at myself because I kept finding excuses to postpone contacting the publishers due to insecurity. And now someone else had gotten there first. So here's my advice. When you believe that you have a good idea, go for it with all your strength. Do not let insecurity or any other excuses keep you away from realizing your dreams. After 1 week of constant whining to my boyfriend, and by the way now husband, that my book should be the one published, he couldn't stand me anymore. And he told me, why do you keep saying all these things to me? I can't do anything to change it. If you believe that your book should be published, you should persuade them. And that was it. Often we get blinded by the disappointment of rejection that the solution is right in front of our eyes. We see it, but we don't even realize it. And that's exactly what I did. I wrote a really long email pointing out why my book was better and why they should publish it. It took them 1 day to get back to me with a contract to sign. So, when someone rejects you, it doesn't mean that your idea is not good or that you are not capable. You need to strongly believe in yourself for others to believe in you. My book did quite well in sales, so the next year I wrote another one, and 2 years later another one. I was feeling unstoppable. And so I wondered, why stay local and not try to expand internationally? I contacted publishers in the US. I don't recall how many emails I sent, but I do remember that they all rejected me. And there it was. I was living a déjà vu. The moment I thought that I was finally past the phase of rejection, there it was again. I tried again the next year and again the next, but the result was always the same. At some point, I convinced myself that it was time to let go and to focus on other things. My main focus now shifted to 3D rendering jobs, and as the years went by, I was slowly but steadily expanding my business. As of last year, my company counted 19 employees, we had some celebrity clients and some big projects in our portfolio. But at the back of my mind, I was still longing the idea of publishing a book internationally. So, armed with a stronger portfolio this time, I contacted again the same publishers. Only this time, I finally got my contract, and this time it was with little effort. As I said, a book requires expertise, which I now had. So, what's the learning lesson here? Sometimes, even though you may have a good idea, the timing may not be right, but you need to have an absolute determination and drive in who you want to be and what you want to achieve, and to hold on to that in spite of disappointments and rejections. It may take 10 years to make it happen, like in my case, but who cares? If at a certain point something seems impossible, take a few steps back, focus on other things that will help you grow in that direction, and eventually you will make it happen. Sometimes, the more time it takes, the prouder you feel when you finally succeed. Let's be honest, there is no secret recipe to success. One thing that I can guarantee is that becoming successful won't happen overnight. There will be periods in your career with more questions than answers, and during those periods you need to have an unshakable confidence in your ability to overcome obstacles and succeed. If you recall, in the first part of this video I told you that although I had studied architecture, the time I was off to work as an architect, and I was determined to find an alternative. I also told you that at the same period I was writing books which were doing pretty well. That's because when there is recession, what most people do is to try and learn new things that will help them find a job. So I thought, why limit myself to just publishing books and not open a learning center? At that time, my books were used as university textbooks, and that brought me many university students. For 3 years, it proved to be a huge success. I managed to move from that crappy old apartment to a brand new one. Did I tell you that I was feeling unstoppable? Well, I did, but guess what? Things changed again. The economic crisis was there to stay, and Greece was one step away from declaring a bankruptcy. So the last thing people in our profession would think was to spend money in learning a 3D software. So there I was again, trying to find an alternative. This time the solution couldn't be local. I shifted my interest in 3D renderings since this is something that doesn't require physical presence. You can be in Greece, in Italy or in India and have clients all over the world. So how do you find your first international client? Back then, 3D renderings were considered a luxury. Not many would pay for them, so I needed to identify the right audience for this type of service. I focused on clients based in countries with strong economies. What I did was to go and buy the most popular magazines on interior design in the US, in Switzerland and in London, thinking that anyone who can pay to advertise in these magazines can also pay for a 3D rendering. So I made a list of all the architects and interior designers I could find in these magazines and I contacted them. That's how I found my first celebrity clients. And now, one piece of advice that no one likes to hear. When you have your first clients, it's time to start making discounts. Before you get upset, believe me, I also don't like discounts. I mean, who likes to work for the same hours and make half the money for no reason? Although in this case, there is a reason. My discounts would be like, refer us to a friend and you will get a 30% off your next project. Offer ends in 10 days. Or send us a second project before you finish your first one and you will get a 20% discount. So make sure that from every offer you're making, you have more to gain. And believe me, I know that if a client is happy, she will refer you to a friend or give you a second project, even if you don't make the discounts. But what we try to do here is to create this type of urgency that will help you speed up the process. Everyone thinks, oh, it's ending now, so I need to take advantage of it right now. And that's how you grow your clientele and your portfolio. No one can predict the future, so if you're asking me what the future holds, I can't give you an honest answer. What my experience has taught me, and I know it's a cliché, is that nothing lasts forever, so I always try to prepare my next step for when this moment comes. Once again, I'm finding myself shifting my interest to the educational field. Lately, I was debating whether I should open again a learning center now that the economy is back up. But that would be like trying to repeat a success recipe from the past. Things have changed. The internet and the globalization have made it easy not to restrain yourself to your country's boundaries. So after some research, I decided to create a course in Udemy. In a rather short period of time, I have more than 3,000 students, so I plan to make many more of these. The nice thing with the online educational system is that it doesn't require you to be physically present. More importantly, you create the content only once at the beginning, and after that, it's passive income. Additionally, I created a channel in YouTube. It's a rather small channel for now, but when, for instance, V6 Beta was released, my video got 20,000 views in just one day. This shows me how invested people are in new releases, in upgrades, and in what's next to come in this industry. Before I end, if I could give you one last piece of advice, I would use the title I have chosen for my speech today. A rocky start makes great climbers. So, if you have recently graduated from college, this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is not the ideal start for you either, and I can relate to how you must be feeling. But you should keep in mind that it's the difficulties that push you to reach your limits, make you think outside the box, and shape you to who you want to become. Thank you all.